For the first time in 7 years, a new Star Wars film was released in theaters. Mandalorian and Grogu was released last Thursday, and it's been a few days, and now it's time to give my review, and I'm going to be completely honest with you. I actually really liked it. Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Nerds of Ren YouTube channel. I hope you guys are having a phenomenal day. This is actually the very first Star Wars film that I get to review here on the channel, and I'm actually really super excited. So yeah, it actually feels really great to be sitting here actually getting to give a review, and I have a lot of things to say. Before I get right into it, I do want to go ahead and state that this is a spoiler review. So if you have not seen the movie and you want to, go watch the movie and then come back to the video. So before I get way too crazy in depth into the review, I do want to talk about the feelings around the theater. When we first got to the theater, it kind of seemed a little dry. Um, but we were there, a good like an hour before the showing. And then people started popping up like crazy. We actually had a full IMAX showing. It was pretty incredible, actually. It was awesome to see that there were a ton of people there to see the film, especially with a lot of the discourse around the theater and how there really wasn't a ton of people pre-scheduled to see it and having bought tickets for pre-sale. So it was awesome to see that. Another thing I do want to note before I get into it is that when we left the theater, everybody that was there with me had great feelings about the movie. They loved it. They enjoyed it. They loved a lot about it. And I seemed to have seen that same thing when we left the theater. Everybody was smiling. Everybody was talking about the movie. Everybody was talking about the things they enjoyed with the movie. I didn't really see anybody hating on it. And I find that pretty great, especially because I did enjoy the movie. Now, I totally understand a lot of the criticisms behind the movie. It's understandable where some people are like, hey, it didn't really push anything with lore. It didn't really do anything for the overarching story with Thrawn and Ahsoka and Luke and the Heir to the Empire stuff that was being rumored to happen. And so I understand that. But as a standalone story for The Mandalorian and for Grogu, this felt like it went right back to season one, season two Mando. And that to me is what I really enjoyed about it. It felt like Mando and Grogu. It felt like a perfect story for them. It pushed Grogu. It made him better. He ended up starting to seem like he's a little more evolved in terms of his thought process and the things that he's able to do. And that was great to see. So, one thing I'm going to talk about is the action in the film. So, one thing I really enjoyed about the film is that it seemed like there was action from beginning to end. Action packed. It was great. It felt like Mandalorian season one, season two. I really enjoyed that. Obviously, I wasn't the biggest fan of season three. I did enjoy it, but this beats season three hands down for me. Now, again, I do understand how some people could say that this should have been season four, and I can agree with that. However, I love what they did with the film. I love that they made it a movie. I'm not mad that they made it a movie. I don't think this is a bad place for Star Wars having had 7 years, between films. I think that this was a great place to insert a film and kind of get us ready for next year for Starfighter, because I think Starfighter is going to be incredible, and I think it's going to be a pretty big blockbuster hit if I'm being honest. Ryan Gosling and everything like that. So I'm actually pretty happy that they made it a film. But it was extremely action packed from the beginning. Mando just doing Mando things, hunting down a warlord, an Imperial warlord. It was pretty cool. Instantly got going. The introduction of Grogu stopping the little mouse droid was awesome. Seeing Mando take out the trooper that was hunting Grogu was pretty cool. Getting to see the AT-AT fall off the cliff, that was really cool. Especially in IMAX. And I just gotta say too, speaking of IMAX, this was only the second film I've ever seen in IMAX, and it was incredible. Sometimes I forget about how good the sound is in the theater, and it was just beautiful, beautiful. Really quick, I also want to say that the music in this movie was absolutely beautiful. Um, it wasn't John Williams. It's a hard comparison. Ludwig has a hard comparison when you compare him to John Williams. And, it's just a hard thing to do. My dad had mentioned that it's hard, that it's not John Williams, and I understand that. I can't really argue that. John Williams is the GOAT. He will always be the GOAT. But with that said, I do like everything they did with the music. It sounded great. It really gave that Mandalorian vibe, and I was vibing with it big time. I was bobbing my head. There was kind of like there was a part where it kind of had like I guess you could say hip hop or R&B theme, and I was loving it. It sounded great. I really think in this movie you start to see that Din Djarin is feared. He's a known bounty hunter now. The galaxy knows him. The galaxy fears him. They understand how great he is. So it's pretty cool to start seeing those connections be made. The twins were by far one of the most annoying, in a good way, parts of the movie. They're actually they're pretty good villains, to be honest. So obviously we see that they want Den to go and rescue Rada. So obviously you know all about that. And so since the Book of Boba Fett, I've always wondered what happened to the twins, and getting to see them in this movie kind of was pretty cool for me. Now obviously, fast forwarding to the end of the movie, um, I really didn't want them to die. I really kind of just thought that they would eventually be the big bads in Book of Boba Fett season 2 or something like that. So I was kind of expecting them to not die. So I was a little upset. I don't want to say upset, but kind of a tad bit confused. But I think for the film, it worked. The way they ended up dying and everything like that, dying to Rada, because they ended up, they were the ones that were hunting Rada. Wanted Rada dead because he was the heir to the throne. They wanted the throne, obviously, and it was very interesting. It was very interesting for me to see Hutts fight, especially each other. We saw Rada fight, um, you know, being part of the gladiator stuff. That was all cool, but seeing him fight the twins, uh, it was something that was not on my bingo card, but I enjoyed it. So when it comes to side characters, seeing Garazeb Aurelios was incredible. I absolutely love that. Nice callback to Rebels. Obviously, he was in season 3, I believe. So that was incredible. I did have a thought of where is Agent Callus. I wanted to know where Agent Callus is. Obviously because we have Zeb, so I think it'll get answered at some point. Personally, I do believe, I'm pretty sure Filoni said that Zeb is in season 2 of Ahsoka. So we're gonna see that. I'm pretty sure Ahsoka season 2 takes place after this movie, so that's pretty cool. As for the Mandalorian and Grogu, I don't really know where their story goes from here. I have some thoughts and some theories, so I am going to eventually make some theory videos on that and what I think is going to happen with their characters and potentially Mandalorian season 4. Now I'm going to go ahead and talk about some highlights for a second. This film felt nostalgic to me when it comes to the original trilogy and the original feel of Star Wars. A lot of CGI, a lot of monsters. The world building was good. The music was great. Um, and one of my biggest standouts, obviously, you have Rada the Hutt. I think he was incredible. And obviously, you have Embo. Embo was great. But once Din Djarin got injured by the snake and was pretty much out for a little bit of the movie, Grogu was such a standout. I felt like this was the most we got of Grogu, probably ever since Grogu's been introduced into Star Wars. This was the most we've gotten of him, kind of in a way that made it feel like, okay, he can take care of himself for a minute. He was taking care of Din. He was helping Din. He saved Din. So that was incredible. Obviously, having Embo hunting him, and having another character. I don't remember what the character's name is, but that character gave him the antidote for Din to help save him. And obviously, the Force healing was part of the reason Din survived as well. The callbacks in all of those scenes to Yoda was absolutely beautiful. It showed Grogu meditating. You got to see that Grogu built this little hut that felt like Yoda on Dagobah. He put Din in a little hut. It was just beautiful. Grogu was walking around with a cane. It was just all incredible. Everybody in the theater was loving it and happy. And I think that's something that really felt good, was even around all of the discourse and all of the bad publicity around the movie. In some ways, I totally understand why some people were very skeptical about the movie. I totally understand it. But to see everybody loving it and everybody laughing and clapping and everything like that, the whole theater clapped when the movie was over. That felt very good to me, as a diehard Star Wars fan. Now, when it comes to Rada, I don't think his story is done. Rada was great. Seeing him fight as a gladiator, seeing him and Din team up when they realized that, when Rada realized that Din was correct when he said that it was a Dejarik and he was going to be killed. And then obviously they sent all of the other monsters after him. So it was pretty awesome. It was pretty awesome. If you would have told me when I was a kid in 2008 that Rada the Hutt was going to be a big character in a live action Star Wars film in 2026, I probably would have told you you're crazy. But it was awesome. Also, I think one of my favorite callbacks in the movie was when the Hutts told Din that they didn't have a picture of him. All they had was an old one. And they showed it, and it was him from the Clone Wars movie. That was a very nostalgic moment to me. That was incredible. I teared up a little bit just because of how cool it was. But another character that I need to talk about that was a standout for me was Embo. Um, Embo is menacing. He barely spoke, but his moments on screen, his presence was very felt. And I think he was one of those villains that people who didn't know who he was, they were like, "Wow, that guy's cool looking. That guy's crazy." It's crazy how my dad even mentioned that his hat was like Captain America's shield. You know, blaster bolts just deflecting right off of it. I thought that was a pretty cool comparison. Now, to be perfectly honest, I think the movie did have a clear focus. I think they knew what they were doing. They were going for it, and it worked for me personally. It worked. I loved it. I loved the way they did everything. Of course, the diehard Star Wars fan in me wanted the connectivity. I wanted it connected to Ahsoka. I wanted it connected to Thrawn. I wanted it connected to Luke. And I think in some ways it did, but it was very subtle, very, very small, and to the point where I don't really feel like any casual fan picked up on it. But one thing I think was pretty interesting, that there's a lot of people saying that it didn't feel like Star Wars at all. And I kind of got to push back on that a little bit, because it's like I saw a video, and I believe it was New Rockstars. They said there were over 100 Easter eggs. You cannot tell me there's no connectivity with 100 Easter eggs. That's just kind of my take on it. A lot of it was, and it was small stuff, like when they had the match, the big gladiator thing. Some of those characters were from the original board, the original board game in the Millennium Falcon. A lot of casuals aren't going to pick up on that. I did. My dad did. My dad's friend did. Evan did. So like we all picked up on that, but a lot of casual people didn't. I think something that was pretty cool too. I have a little cousin who does not watch Star Wars, at all. I think he's just getting ready to, and he went with us, and so he's extremely casual, and he loved it. He said that was one of the best movie experiences he's had in years, and I think that's interesting because it's like we were all worried about it not connecting too much, and we were all worried about it not having a ton of lore. And while it didn't, and while I wanted that, and while I understand why, some people were upset that it didn't connect and didn't have a big overarching problem and storyline, it's interesting that it kind of, I feel like it was made for casuals, and I feel like the movie was made for people that don't know Star Wars to get into Star Wars and to kind of dip their toes into it. So I feel like it worked on that case. Now, to be perfectly honest, I don't really feel like this movie had crazy fan service. I felt like they were just telling their story. And to be honest, I will say, I think Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni are incredible. I think they know what they're doing. Um, it's also good to note, for those of you that may not know, Kathleen Kennedy was still listed as a producer on this film. Of course, Dave and John were, John, I believe John directed it. So it's good to note that. I want people to be aware of that. I believe Starfighter is the final thing that she is a producer on. So we will see where Star Wars goes after Starfighter, and obviously we'll see where it goes, because some of the stuff Dave's doing. Obviously you have Darth Maul. The show was incredible. Obviously you have the Ahsoka season 2. I believe that's going to be peak Star Wars, to be perfectly honest with you. I loved season 1. I loved everything about season 1. I'm actually looking for the comic set. I have the first one of Ahsoka season 1, and then I have 2 variant covers of that one as well. So I'm excited for that. So when it comes to the complete story of the Mandalorian and Grogu movie, I've put a lot of thought into my rating. Now, if you don't know and if you aren't subscribed to the Nerd Bros podcast, I recommend that you do that. Evan and I we're loving it, man. We're approaching a year rapidly, so it's great. But last week, before we went and saw the movie, we set out our expectations of what we believe our grades were going to be. Evan said he believed a 7.0, and I went with a 8.2. And I left the theater happy. I left the theater happier than an 8.2, with a higher score than an 8.2. And I've put a lot of thought into it. And I'm going to give that movie an 8.9 out of 10. Now, obviously, it's not Revenge of the Sith. It's not The Empire Strikes Back. It's not Return of the Jedi. It's not A New Hope. It's not any of those. But I would probably argue, in my personal opinion, that it's one of the best Disney era Star Wars films. I just loved it. It felt like Star Wars. It felt like, you didn't have to have too much aspect of Jedi Force, Sith, that kind of thing. And it really worked for a Mandalorian standalone film. So yeah, I'm very pleased with an 8.9 rating. Like I said, I went far and above the 8.2. I'm happy with an 8.9. My original score was a little higher, but I kind of have had a few days, and that's kind of why I wanted to wait till the day to film this. So I am pretty happy with it. I hope you guys did enjoy the movie, and I hope you guys did enjoy this video as well. If you're new to the channel, I hope that you subscribe for more awesome Star Wars content. We're on the grind to 1,000 subscribers. And like I said, I totally understand if you didn't like it. If you did or did not like it, comment below and let me know why, and let me know if you did or like it, and let me know your scores as well, because I love hearing from you guys. I love your guys' input. I think the best thing with Star Wars is that we all have a voice. We all have a voice. If we liked it, we can share that and we can say why we liked it. If we didn't like it, we can share that and say why we didn't like it. I think it's important to know that we all have a voice and we can all say what we liked, what we disliked, and we can have civil conversations about that. So thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you do subscribe. Also, like I said, subscribe to the Nerd Bros podcast. We have a new one coming out every single week. This week's will probably be Wednesday, and we're going to be talking about the Mandalorian and Grogu. I'm probably going to go a little more into depth. So definitely head on over there and watch that. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you guys have an incredible rest of your day. Stay tuned for more awesome Star Wars content. And until next time, my friends, may the Force be with you.